Welcome back to Believers IAS Academy. In today's topic of the day discussion, we will be discussing once again about the US tariffs and how the recent developments have taken place in terms of the pharmaceuticals and the recently imposed 100% tariffs on all the branded and patented pharmaceuticals, which highlights the growing intersection of trade protectionism and also simultaneously health security. So this particular video we will try and understand with respect to India as to what the country is planning to do, considering India being the global hub for affordable medicines. This presents both risks and opportunities in reshaping India's pharmaceutical strategy. So this particular video, let's try and understand the possible implications that this move will create to India and the India's response, and a little bit about the recent update. So as we all know, the president of US, Donald Trump, has decided to roll out 100% tariffs or import duties on all the branded and the patented pharmaceutical products, which will be effective from October 2025, aiming to push companies to establish domestic manufacturing facilities. So basically, the Trump government is planning to make sure that it is strengthening its local production of pharmaceuticals to ensure that the dependence on the outside pharmaceutical products are reduced. And also this in a way is trying to create more opportunities for the US citizens by making sure that the companies, especially the pharmaceutical companies, are setting up their own manufacturing units in the US. So let's try and understand the background a bit. So as we all know, the United States is the largest global pharmaceutical market. It imports medicines worth $86.4 billion. In fact, this is the data that we have got in the year 2023, and India alone has contributed roughly about 10.6% of this $86.4 billion of all those imports that US did. And primarily most of the items that the pharmaceutical items that India used to export were the low cost generic drugs. And this India's pharmaceutical industry is not only a major foreign exchange earner but also a critical supplier of affordable medicines to the US. Means all the generic medicines that India used to export to US was the only means of affordable medicines to the US citizens and other markets, and hence this absolutely is important to understand that now we have 100% tariffs. Of course, the 100% tariff is not put on the generic medicines, it is only categorized to the branded and the patented pharmaceutical products. So how this affects India? Because for India, the US is the biggest market, and obviously all the products that India now ships to US will obviously be costly for their people there, and obviously the demand reduces. But on the other hand, for the US, since it is imposing 100% tariff on all the pharmaceutical, especially the branded and the patented pharmaceuticals from India, obviously in the very short term the pharmaceutical prices will be very high for the citizens of US. But the US is thinking on the long run that it would further create two more opportunities in US. That one, it would help create jobs. Another one, it would reduce the foreign dependency for the essential commodities like pharmaceuticals. So now how is this possible? Because now the Trump is, or let's say the US government or the US President Donald Trump has put forward a negotiating tool saying that this 100% tariffs will be removed or reduced, provided the companies, all the branded and the patented pharmaceutical companies, opens their own manufacturing units within the US, right? So this is the biggest change or the dimension that we have to know, that unless and until any companies from India is not setting up a market, or let's say a manufacturing unit in US, then those branded or patented pharmaceuticals will be inviting 100% tariffs. So with this particular move, how is it helping US? One is with the setting up of marketing, or let's say with the setting up of the manufacturing market in the manufacturing unit in the US market, it would ultimately create more jobs to the US citizens, and also it would help US to reduce its foreign imports, especially concerning the important pharmaceutical products. But of course, this has created a huge shock to India. Why? Because the India's biggest market, right? US is India's biggest market in terms of pharmaceuticals. So what are the implications to India? For India, the headline risk is significant. This is very important to understand. So what is headline risk? So now, headline risk refers to that particular risk which is seen temporarily, right? As investor confidence and stock performance may be hit. So this is that something that only affects the investor confidence and the stock performances. Let's say the stocks with respect to all the pharmaceuticals will probably reduce. So it basically looks like a big problem. Okay, the headline risk significance basically seems like it's a big problem only in media and probably in the investor's mind, right? And also it will be pretty much reflected in the stock performances. All the pharmaceutical stocks may eventually go down, right? But actually the real impact will be pretty much less as compared to the news that people are hearing. So even if the actual impact is limited, the perception of risk is higher. So that is what the headline risk talks about. So for India, the headline risk is significant as investor confidence and stock performance may be hit. However, the operational risk is lower. So what is the operational risk? Operational risk, nothing but the real or the day-to-day impact on the Indian pharmaceutical companies. So as we discussed, it is just a headline risk rather than the operational risk, which is lower since the bulk of India's exports are mostly generics which remain outside the tariff ambit. That is, all the generics, especially the OTC, the biologics, right, and all the specialty drugs. So all of these essential commodities or essential pharmaceutical drugs are basically excluded from the 100% tariff regime of US. So Indian companies can continue their main business in the US without having a major disruption in this generic medicines, and in fact, it would pretty much have reasonably less impact on the Indian pharmaceuticals, considering that most of the Indian imports, or let's say Indian exports to the foreign, let's say the US market, is mostly generic. So the real concern lies for Indian firms with exposure to patented or branded formulations only, who may face barriers in maintaining competitiveness, right? So this is the implications to India, right? So these firms might face higher costs, especially the one exposed to patented or branded formulations. They might attract more higher costs, or have to rethink their strategy, maybe even consider setting up facilities in the US to avoid tariffs. But on the long run, considering the 90%, or let's say if 90% of what India exports is safe from tariffs, the actual damage is absolutely very limited, considering we are exporting more of the generic products. So now, what is the India's response? So the Ministry of External Affairs has indicated that the situation is being closely monitored, and analysts underline or state that while the immediate trade impact may be limited, right, considering that we are importing more of generic pharmaceuticals than the patented or the branded ones, the policy trajectory signals a longer term challenge for India's pharma exports and its positioning in global value chains, right? So what is absolutely required for the country to do now? So one is to establish a diplomatic tie, a proper diplomatic tie, and also think of market diversification. So India should proactively engage in the US through trade, health security diplomacy, and also in the meantime the country should try and look for other markets, export markets, especially in the Europe, Africa and Latin America, to make sure that the over dependence on the foreign, especially the US market, is reduced. And in fact, diversifying the markets will reduce the over dependence on the one destination also. And the second important thing for the country to do is to strategic industry realignment, that encourage most of the Indian pharma firms to explore joint ventures, right, and even plan to set up manufacturing units in the US, aligning with the regulatory and political expectations, which could reduce the protectionist pressures and enhance goodwill. So of course it is not asking to completely set up the units in the US market, but also try to have some joint ventures, so that part of US sanctions can be reduced, is what is being talked about in the as an immediate measure. And on the long term, right, on the long term, it is very important that the country invests in the R&D, especially the research and development push, so that the shift focuses from a generic centric model toward research and development in patented drugs, biologics and biosimilars, which enables India to climb the pharmaceutical value chain and remain competitive despite tariff shocks, right? So this is all about the development that is currently happening. So of course a lot to come. In fact, recently the external affairs ministry, in fact Mr. Jaishankar, has recently convened a meeting in the New York, right? The BRICS have once again met, and a lot of developments is yet to come, and of course we will keep you updated on the same. For now, this is what it is. So it is important that you know what the important key developments are, right? Anyway, that's all for this particular video. Signing off, this is Madan Gopal. Have a beautiful day.